So this week's Fearful Symmetry Friday comes from Chapter 12, The Burden of the Valley of Vision. And I believe it's the first section of that chapter. In my book, it's page 406. Now, there is mention here of Blake's Orc cycle. And if you've kept up with this series, you might have heard that phrase a few times. And the Orc is a youthful version, basically, of Urizen or Urizen. And he brings about revolution. So I'll begin with Northrop Frye saying, "The English nation in Blake's day has come to the historical crisis in which it has to choose whether it will follow the Orc cycle to its end or make the imaginative recreation of itself that will achieve a spiritual England as the Hebrew prophets achieved a spiritual Israel. Winter is approaching, and a great harvest of culture and prophecy is waiting. The English may gather it in and await a millennial spring, or allow it to rot in the fields. So far, they are considering the ways of the grasshopper and being foolish. Lockean doctrines of a passive mind and an external nature have spread over all the arts, to their infinite damage. The English still have the Bible and their great poets, but no longer understand how to use their imaginations in reading them, and the visionary tradition is now a broken and straggling line. Blake will of course be told that England is at war with Napoleon and is too busy for extra things. This is exactly his point. The decline of imaginative power in England is closely connected with the fact that England is an empire at war, and is approaching barbarism not so much because it is at war, as because it is an empire. If Napoleon wins, a very possible view in 1809, Blake may help England, under a Pax Gallica, to lead captive her conqueror, as Greece did Rome. But the centrifugal force of imperial ambitions, which sucks all genius out of the country, will only be stimulated by victory. The probabilities indicate that London will follow the Orc cycle to where Rome has gone, and where Babylon and Egypt went before Rome, that England will become a natural and reasonable state in which religion and philosophy will subside into fatalism and moral virtue, art into a luxury trade, and mass war, mass tyranny, and mass slavery crush its great cities into swarming anthills, while genius and prophecy go wherever there are still living men to be found. A certain exhaustion of vitality at the end of a cycle of civilization is inevitable insofar as it is part of an organic process, but a man should grow wiser because he must grow older, and the same is true of a nation. The function of the prophet is not to point out what is inevitable, but to show what can be built up out of an inevitable development. The real lesson of history is contained in the instructive contrast between the evolutionary Hebraic and the cyclic classical cultures, and the violent hatred of the latter which Blake expresses from Milton on, and which incites him to such utterances as, quote, "It is the classics, and not Goths nor monks, that desolate Europe with wars," end quote, is motivated by his intense desire to point this moral. To the rule stated above that empires do not inspire major art, the chief exception is Virgil, and Virgil shows the cloven hoof in the 6th book of the Aeneid, where the Sibyl's prophecy assigns conquest to Rome and the arts to more effeminate nations, a passage which really means that Rome's greatest poet is acquiescing to the degeneration of his own culture. The Hebrew prophets, by the imaginative recreation of their culture, produced Jesus. The English, if they do the same thing, can produce a second coming of Jesus. Blake, therefore, must come forward to insist that, quote, "empire follows art," and not vice versa, as Englishmen suppose, end quote. He will use his canon as a New Testament for English culture. He will teach the English how to use their imaginations, how to develop the immense reserves of power that they are leaving untapped. A savage confronted with a modern metropolis is confronted only with a minor example of what the same human imagination that exists in himself can do. Between a commonplace England and a spiritual England, there will be the same link but a far greater contrast, and an awakened England would make short work of Napoleon, as of all the rest of its previous dreams. The answer to the popular estimate of the comparative values of a civilized and a practical life is, quote, "I'm really sorry to see my countrymen trouble themselves about politics. If men were wise, the most arbitrary princes could not hurt them. If they are not wise, the freest government is compelled to be a tyranny. Princes appear to me to be fools. Houses of Commons and Houses of Lords appear to me to be fools. They seem to me to be something else besides human life." End quote. It is perhaps not a wholly satisfactory answer, but it belongs to the type of thinking that Blake feels he must introduce to the English mind. Otherwise, he would be what is called, in Point Counterpoint, the last civilized man. Had Blake heard himself so described in his lifetime, it might have been the one thing that could have broken his spirit. Blake's primary objective is to revive public painting. The revival of other aspects of civilization will then follow more easily. Against him will be the whole trading combination of commercial painters with their patrons and connoisseurs. With him will be the common sense of English public opinion. It will be necessary for Blake to write manifestos explaining the facts of the situation. He will have to tell the public something of his own career in order to establish his right to speak and to clear himself of any unusually malicious series of personal slanders. And if he explains that his reputation as a fool and madman has been built up by a clique of unscrupulous competitors, and brings forward his pictures to prove it, the public is bound to listen to him. Truth, he had said, can never be told so as to be understood and not to be believed. He will also have to explain that there is no mystery about art, and that those who insist on one are humbugs. The sense of mystery comes from a timid lack of confidence in the imagination. The best that has been thought and said or painted or composed in the world is within the reach of everyone, and those who do not possess the highest pleasures and the richest wisdom are being swindled, whether by themselves or by others. I think that's where I'm going to leave off here. I can go on and on because it's so good, but just a little channel update. I've gotten some actual video editing software, and I did this little animation here, if you're looking at this on the screen, with another piece of software that I got, and there's going to be some cool little upgrades to my channel over the next couple of months, if things go as I hope they go. So again, if you like this sort of thing, give the video a like and subscribe. Thank you.